Sure. For those of you who didn't hear, she's asked about the sanctity of life in general. She began by mentioning that as she goes on walks here, she saw, for example, a dog that was very, very, very thin and did not look healthy and was trying to nurse and feed two very small puppies. And of course someone came and was feeding the dog a little bit of milk, which made her happy. But she said it was so sad to see, and was asking about, in general, the sanctity of life, in that case animals, but also the sanctity of life of humans, where in our planet today, we really are at a crossroads almost of having to balance this sanctity of life, of saying life is sacred, life is a gift, thou shalt propagate, and yet on the other hand realizing that the earth really cannot sustain so much life, and asking about that. So 2 parts. First, very specifically about the animals. It is a great tragedy, and actually it was something that our beloved Shanti brought first to our attention a few years ago, and about the dogs particularly. Pujya Swamiji's been committed to working with the cows for many, many years, but Shanti, who had been outside in the streets and saw so much of this, first brought this to our attention. And over the last couple of years, the intention has actually manifested into more and more programs that we've been able to do, including just recently actually the facilitation of and sponsorship of a veterinary camp that just ran the last several weeks here and on another property that we run, of both treatment as well as surgical sterilization. Because one of the reasons that they are in such bad shape is just due to how many there are, and there are just too many of them, and there's just not enough food to go around, and so they fight. So that's something that we are actually committed to working even more for. And I think that the awareness generated by programs like this, by camps like this, it's one of the great benefits of things like social media. It's easy to, in one swoop, say things like that are counter-spiritual or unspiritual. And then you realize the incredible speed at which information is able to travel in a way that it didn't used to be. And so camps like this go on. People put it on social media, suddenly more and more people come to know about it, and I'm sure that we're going to start seeing a greater proliferation of camps like this, of more and more vets wanting to actually come and serve here and do the work, particularly when there are facilities in place for that. All life is sacred, whether it's human, whether it's animal, whether it's water, whether it's the landscaping growing on the sides of the water, whether it's the flora and fauna that one finds both in the riverbeds as well as lining the riverbeds, as well as in the river basin. And the work that we're doing to keep the water clean and flowing and plentiful, because it's not just about cleaning it, it's also about a volume of water that is enough to properly sustain life, is due not just to a respect for and reverence of human life, but also to a respect for and reverence of and love for the animal life that lives in the river basin, in the river itself. In fact, when we started the campaign, people will throw plastic bags into Ganga. And what they'll do is they'll purchase flowers out of great love and great reverence. And then as they offer the flowers, they'll offer the plastic bag that the flowers came in. And when you try to explain to people about not doing that, in fact, one of the things that you hear is, well, Ganga is the goddess. Ganga purifies our sins. Ganga is the ultimate cleanser. What do you mean she's going to be harmed by a plastic bag? And the explanation at that point actually becomes one of the animal life. Okay, Ganga can handle a plastic bag. But the fish living in Ganga, who swim into the plastic bag, therefore their gills cannot open, therefore they suffocate and die. Or the cows living downstream who, when the plastic bag gets washed up on the side of the river, the cows that then eat it and suffocate and die. So it's actually been just as much, if not more, for the animal life as for the aesthetics of the river herself, that so much of this work was begun and has been continuing on. Lastly, in terms of the sanctity of human life and overpopulation, just because something is sacred doesn't mean that the ultimate goal should be to increase in quantity. In fact, sometimes the very sacredness of something requires the proliferation of it to be kept in check. And so we're really firm believers in making responsible decisions about proliferation of the human life. And in fact, one of the things that Puja Swamiji says on a very specific level to so many couples who come from all over the world who can't conceive, and they'll come and they'll want, for example, a blessing or a puja, that they should be able to conceive. And he always says to them, there's so many children already in the world. What you should pray for is the blessing to be able to see those children as your own. Pray for the blessing to be able to open up your heart enough that you can take one of those children into your life and not feel like you had to get the second best, or that you had to make a sacrifice, or that you had to concede to adopting rather than actually being able to have a child of your own. So part of the very specific as well as general teachings are always about being able to do what we can to care for the life that is already there, rather than being focused on simply producing more and more and more of it. And whether it's emphasizing choices like vegetarianism, whether it's emphasizing choices to, as he reminds us, live simply so that others may simply live. The teachings over and over and over again are about taking care of the quality of life for those who are already here, rather than being focused on producing more and more of it, when neither is it good for the humans we're going to produce, nor is it good for the earth that is at such a fragile, fragile place. So he's the last one to try to convince people, oh, you definitely should make sure to have children. Oh, you should definitely make sure, this is part of your dharma. You have to have babies. He's the last one, which is very unusual, actually, in the traditional Indian Hindu context, where so much of our quote-unquote dharma and goals of life, so much of that is thou shalt reproduce. And he always emphasizes and reminds people that it's not about bringing life specifically, physically from our wombs, but it's about giving life to those who are already here and who are deeply, deeply suffering. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes?